Hello. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about just something that tends to come up a lot when people are researching aquariums in general, not, just saltwater or freshwater or whatever, just aquariums in general. And in terms of the maintenance, upkeep, and cost. And just trying to kind of put some perspective on that because one of the things that's really frustrating when you see people coming into the hobby and they're asking questions and then you see all these responses from people saying, oh, it's the maintenance hassle is ridiculous, it's, really expensive and all this kind of stuff. And so it's really interesting because a lot of people, the first thing I'd like to point out is that a lot of people, when it comes to fish keeping and things like that, they're looking at the upfront costs because yeah, you have to build a captive environment in order to contain a fish plant, underwater plant, inverts, whatever it is that you're wanting to keep in your tank. And so yeah, they're looking at these upfront costs. Um, but one of the things that you find really interesting is that with any other, animal, pet, whatever you want to call it, that you choose to keep, um, although the costs up front may not be quite as obvious unless you're getting, say, purebred cat or dog, you aren't seeing all the other little things that add up with them, and that people tend to give a pass on a lot of these other bills and expenses and just upkeep with a given pet that they tend to condemn a fish for or aquariums for. So the first thing and the obvious thing is, of course, with fish, the cost is more upfront and in your face, as it were, because of, you've got to build the environment, you've got to get the tank, you've got to get the tank heater, the substrate, the filter and everything else. And, if you're wanting to be a good fish keeper, test kit and those sorts of things. Obviously, there are massive variations in degrees with which you can keep an aquarium. Um, you can have everything from a 5 gallon beta tank on the freshwater side of things to a 10-foot long, fully active coral reef loaded with corals, fish, and everything else. And I mean, obviously, you're talking about night and day difference between the two of them in terms of upkeep costs and setup and startup costs. So, but it's one of the things that I find really interesting is that people they complain about water changes, complain about filter changes, and the periodic glass cleaning, maybe cleaning decor if you've got like a freshwater tank with some fake plants in there and that sort of thing. Um, but nobody talks about pooper scooping their front lawn every time they have to go mow it from, say, a cat or a dog or some other animal that you might want to keep. Nobody's talking about the vet bills. Nobody's talking about the shots. Nobody's talking about these various other different components that you don't deal with when it comes to aquariums and fish keeping. There's no veterinary bills. Whatever costs you pay for, the fish and the filters, and then the general maintenance and upkeep. That's pretty much it. So as far as water changes go, on a smaller size tank with one or just a couple of fish, you're I'll use my 10-gallon freshwater tank as an example here. I've got a couple of glow tetras in there. That tank cost me about $150 to set up. Now, keep in mind that figure of $150, that includes the tank kit, that includes the gravel, that includes the decor, that includes the water test kit, the API test kit that I got for it. That includes an upgraded light bar, that includes the tank heater. I mean, everything is included in that upfront figure, other than, of course, the fish themselves, which were roughly about $9 to $10 a piece. And so, in that sense, I have probably between the cost of that and here's another big thing, the cost of food. The flake food that I have for them, a container of that stuff, has lasted me almost a year. and it costs about $5. I challenge you to feed even a single cat on the cheapest, crappiest diet you can find for $5 a year. You can't do it. I know this because I grew up with a cat and we had Hill Science diet and everything. That stuff is spendy. Because you want to provide for the long-term health of your animal and make sure they're not developing urinary stones or anything like that, or crystals, excuse me, not stones. So anyways, these are some of the things that you got to look at when it comes to the costs and the maintenance and the upkeep. Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I would gladly even change my 90-gallon saltwater tank than to ever have to deal with another litter box again. I don't miss that at all from when I was a kid growing up and taking care of the family cat and everything. I don't miss that at all. Even with clumping litter, it's just nasty to deal with and take care of. And it's not any fun to follow after a dog and poop or scoop your lawn either. So, anyways, what I'm trying to get at here is that I find it really interesting and funny, as it were, that people are very adamant about pointing out, filter changes, water changes, and cleaning of glass or whatever, or decor, as just being this unbearable burden, but they have no problem whatsoever having to go out and scoop literally just nasty, stinky fecal matter with flies buzzing around it out of their front lawn, and somehow, because it's a cat or a dog, it gets a pass or whatever. And to me, that just doesn't jive. With my own personal experiences, having owned or cared for several of these different kinds of animals, it's just one of those things that I always find funny when people are looking at it. Now, I'm not here to debate the interactivity of, say, a cat or a dog compared to a fish. I mean, I get that. But I'm just talking about the fact that, as I said, people complain about water changes and various other things. Once again, I'm going to go back to this. On my 10-gallon freshwater tank, my maintenance routine is as follows. Okay? I do about a 50% water change because, I do run a fairly decent sized bioload for a small tank like that. 50% water change once a week. The time it takes me to fill, a bucket of water and just dump a little bit of, the treatment stuff in there to make the tap water safe, the time that it takes me to refill it, especially with that nice little $19 pump that automatically just pumps it straight off, out of the bucket and up into the tank for me, so you don't even have to lift the bucket. The amount of time it takes to do that, I would say roughly about 10 minutes to do a water change. On a tank that size, it takes about 10 minutes. Okay? 10 minutes to do a water change once a week. So that's about 40 minutes a month to do a water change. Okay? The filter takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to change once a month. Okay? I change the carbon filter on that thing once a month, which is about what's recommended. Once again, about 10 minutes to change that and swap that out. So let's see, we're up to about 50 minutes for the month for care. Now, the decor, okay, about every 3 to 4 weeks, I pull it out and I, fill up the bathroom sink and pour in a little bit of white distilled vinegar and scrub down the decor. And that probably takes me, we'll say, about 15 minutes. So figure 15 minutes roughly every 3 weeks or so. And that will take care of the algae and keep the plants and the decor looking good in the tank. And that's pulling all the decor out other than the rock work, of course. Okay? So, once again, probably about 15 minutes on that. And so that's just over an hour. The time it takes for me on a daily basis to feed a single little pinch of food, I mean, that's negligible. That takes about, 30 seconds maybe. And so in my opinion, that's not even, worth counting. It takes more time to feed a cat or a dog than it does to do the pinch of flake food there, to say nothing, of course, of the cost of of feeding fish versus cats and dogs, it's night and day difference. So once again, you're talking about a tank that takes just over an hour per month to maintain. Um, I guarantee you, with the amount of time you spend cleaning, whether it be cleaning a litter box, whether it be picking up in the yard after the dog, whether it be the time spent feeding them, in the case of a dog, walking it, getting it out there, getting it active, and everything else, you're going to spend way more than an hour a month, doing that. And the cost of keeping it is definitely going to exceed the cost of what I've spent on my 10-gallon freshwater tank. Even I would say for a single cat that you pick up from the Humane Society, by the time you factor in the cost of the veterinary bills, because even if the animal's in perfect health, you're still going to have to get periodic shots, get checkups, things like that. You may decide that kitty needs to be declawed, spayed, neutered, whatever, you know what I mean? As well as the cost of feeding it. They're going to go through way more food than $5 a year. I guarantee you that. It doesn't matter what it is. So as far as that's concerned, in those respects, yes. I mean, obviously, if you're maintaining a smaller freshwater tank, I would say that it's very cost effective. It is not time consuming. It's just a matter of setting regular maintenance routines. And once again, it's just a matter of making sure you're staying on top of and taking care of the maintenance on them, which really it may seem like it's frequent, but guaranteed you're going to clean a litter box at least weekly if you have any kind of a nose on you, because it smells so bad you can't stand it. So I would say, a smaller freshwater tank, and I would even say a smaller, like nano tank, saltwater tank, fish only, with maybe a couple of clownfish. Once again, I would say that the cost and maintenance routine is relatively negligible, say, compared to a cat or a dog. So anyways, once again, it's just one of those things where I think, we need to kind of put some perspective on it in terms of the total time and amount spent on the animals, and just understanding that with the aquarium, your costs are more upfront. And which is where, a lot of people get put off by the aquariums, as they see the cost up front, and then they think about maintenance routines, and they just say, oh, well, it's too much, or whatever. But then, once again, they might have, cats or dogs or whatever, and they're not thinking about how much time and money is actually going into these animals to keep them. So, once again, it's all a matter of perspective, and how interested, of course, you are in aquariums and fish keeping. If you're looking at it from a perspective of you already keep cats and dogs and then aquariums are periphery, then yeah, it's going to add some additional responsibilities and upkeep and maintenance on you. But if you're looking at animals, particularly if you're like myself and you come from a household full of allergy sufferers, it's kind of a no-brainer that fish are a really good way to go. Because they're not going to, that's, of course, the other thing. I don't miss in any way, shape, or form all the hairballs, pet dander, and other such things that are associated with fur-bearing animals. Don't have to deal with that with an aquarium. So, anyways, and that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.